Hello and welcome to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran, and our episode today is a look at what life is like for a footballer in Scotland. So, generally when we think of footballers, we think of mega millionaires, we think of glamorous lives on social media, but the reality of football in Scotland is completely different. We're going to be having a talk about how uncertain life can be, especially when so many players are on one-year contracts, on limited wages, and how something as simple as an injury could suddenly find players without a club and without an income. Our guest today is Chris Higgins, who now works for the PFA Scotland. Chris's story is really interesting. He started out at Motherwell, and then his journey took him round a lot of different Scottish clubs. And he's also going to talk to us about the dilemma he faced when he moved from full-time football into part-time football. So, really interesting story, some really interesting themes here that are definitely worth discussing. Please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already, and please leave us a 5-star review. That would really help build the audience. A big thank you to everyone who has listened so far. I've received a lot of messages from you guys since the podcast began, and it's nice to know that there's a community of people who also care about these issues. Let's keep this going. Let's improve Scottish football. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Chris Higgins. Chris, how are you?
Good, Kieran. How's yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very well, thank you. Can we kick this off by you giving us a bit of an introduction to yourself and obviously your career in Scottish football?
Yes, my name's Chris Higgins, and I retired from playing in June or May 2022. Started my career a long time ago now, in June 2001 as a young 16-year-old at Motherwell Football Club. Spent 4 years there too, as an apprentice player, and then two within the first team environment. Didn't do too much at that level, unfortunately for myself. But to be fair, I had a good manager. Terry Butcher was my manager. As being a left centre back, I learned a few things from him. Not how to header a brick wall and have blood all over your head.
I was going to say, yeah.
But he thankfully helped me secure another club. So I moved to Clyde, who was full-time at that point, 2005. They were playing in the Championship. They had just actually let go a lot of the players. They had a kind of restructure, and with the budgets, they were losing a lot of money beforehand. I think they were paying players too much, so they decided to go with a lot of young players. I was only 20 years old at that point, so I was in that category. But they signed a lot of players who had been in around about the first team fringes of Premier League clubs. I think the oldest player at that time was 23, and the whole squad. So it was a very young squad. And so I was there for 4 years, had some great times, and I've got some great memories from that period of my career. It taught me a lot. I was able to play first team football every single week in the second tier of Scottish football. So it was what I needed at that age. From there I went to Dunfermline, and it was a difficult period. I went to a club who had a big budget, had a lot of big name players on big wages and international players as well. So I wasn't a first pick immediately, which was challenging because I would have played for so long every single week, and I was one of the first names in the team sheet at times. I was the captain at times at Clyde, so it knocked me a little bit. It was difficult up and down a little bit. However, I made to win the league and win the Championship at Dunfermline. After that, I was let go, which is again the trials and tribulations of Scottish football. Played most of the season in the team, and I was let go. I didn't expect it. I thought, great, I've got an opportunity to play in the Premier League. Anyway, that's the joys of football. I then went to Queen of the South, where I was there for 6 years, also the longest spell in my career. And at the first season we got relegated, which wasn't great. But after that, it was a real successful period for the club and myself. I was appointed to captain. We then won at that point it was the second division, which is now League One. Won that, won the Challenge Cup, It was a real successful period for the club, winning the league, winning 2 cups, and then 2 consecutive playoffs. And one of the seasons was Rangers, Hearts, Hibs were the top 3, and we were 4th. And it was brilliant playing at those grounds, and the atmosphere was brilliant. So anyway, stayed there for 6 years, and I left in 2017. Went to Ayr United under Ian McCall, and I loved it down there. The fans are. I love the atmosphere in Somerset. It's fantastic. Behind the goals, but it's a real fans club. You know, it's a small town. Probably most people in Ayr support Ayr, which is great. And a good and bad period at Ayr. We won the league, which was great, and it was brilliant. However, I snapped my Achilles during that period, which was difficult. I was 33 at that point. So it was challenging, but I always look back at my time in Ayr with fond memories because the dressing room was fantastic. Won the league, had a real successful period again. Ayr, the next again season, went on to the Championship playoffs, so it was good. However, I left in 2019. I was coming back from injury. I wasn't playing enough, and that's just part of football. So I then decided to go part-time, Kieran. I had the option to stay full-time. That was going back to 2019. I had a couple of opportunities to stay full-time. Spoke to my now wife. She knocked some sense into me and says, look, you're offered a 1-year contract. You could be in this position a year later. And at that point, I thought, you know what, I'm going to apply for a couple of jobs. One being my role at the PFA, and one being another job within coaching. I was lucky enough to be offered both. So even before that, to be honest with you, I just made the decision to go part-time and sign for East Fife before I was even offered any jobs. But I decided to take the role at the PFA, and looking back, it's one of the best decisions of my life, to be honest, because I love my job. And a year later, after signing for East Fife, COVID hit. So I look back in that and I say to myself, if I decide to stay full time, COVID hits in March, football's all over the place, and I'm a 35-year-old centre back. Would I have got a new contract? Maybe not, depending on how I was playing and what the situation was. But again, that kind of unknown would have been difficult. So at that point, when COVID hit, I was in a job that I was loving. I was still playing part-time football, and then moving through COVID, I was also playing at East Fife. I loved my time at East Fife as well. I was there for 3 years, made over 100 appearances, and we had some difficult times at East Fife, some good times, and then unfortunately in my last season we got relegated. And from there, I was 37 at that point, and I made the decision to retire. Now, a lot of people would maybe say to me, why are you retiring on a bad season? I tried to look at it out with that, because I didn't want to. I mean, would I have retired if we won the league? I don't know is the answer, because obviously we didn't. But at that time, I thought the time was right. I felt the time was right. I'd played for 21 years professionally, and if you'd told me that when I was 15 years old, I'd have took the hand off you for that. You know, I feel so privileged to have played for so long. 18 years of that full time, getting paid every day to play football. I mean, come on, what's not to love about that? Yes, a wee 5-minute spell in my career there, but that from starting all the way through to retirement.
No, it's really interesting, you know, and you've seen a lot of Scottish football in that time. What you've done, obviously, is you've been able to have quite a successful transition out of football. And, you know, obviously I'd like to kind of dig into this with you a little bit, because probably a lot of players are either unprepared or maybe don't have qualifications to fall back on if either they're let go when they're younger, or even when they come to the end of their career at the kind of age that you're at. So how important is it to try and help prepare players for a kind of soft landing, to help them transition into a career, whether it is still in football or if it's into some other line of work?
I think it's vital, Kieran, and that's not just on one person or organisation. It's vital from every single stakeholder within a footballer's life. You know, it's in Scotland that it's a very, very small percentage that can earn enough money to retire at 35, 36 if you're lucky, and have enough money in the bank to say, you know what, I can I can take it easy. I can decide what I want to do. I can, whatever it may be, you know. It's a very, even players that are playing at the higher end of the Premier League and earning a few £1,000s a week, these guys will have nice houses, nice cars, these players, and they'll have some money in the bank, but it won't last them for the next 35 years or so. You know, it's a very, very challenging time for players. But I think we all have a responsibility to help players, and I think so. The central part is the player. Player needs to take responsibility to think about it. I've been there myself. It's not always on the front of your mind or the first thing you think of because you want to play football, and it's all you've wanted to do. So the unknown is a bit, I don't know what I want to do, so I'll think about that later. But certainly ourselves at the PFA, we try and look at the player holistically in many different environments with the support we provide in terms of the legal support, which is also a main part of what a trade union offers. We've also got the wellbeing department, and we've got our education department, which is what I'm involved in. But by more and more players doing it, it becomes less of a stigma. You see more and more players, and I've seen since I started over 4 years ago with the PFA, more and more players engaging with future career or personal development work. It can be simple as creating a CV. It can be simple as doing your coaching badges. It could be as complex as going and doing a university degree. So it's, and my passion is to try and help players find out what they want to do longer term. It's not always easy because I get many players that come and say I'm not sure, and I can empathise with that because I've been in that position. When I was in my early 20s, I never looked at anything. You know, I got home from training, put my feet up, and put a movie on. You know, and it took some difficult times for me to think, you know what, I'm going to do something to protect myself. I love when a player gets in touch with me here because I go, right, okay, let's meet up for a coffee, let's have a phone call, whatever it may be, however comfortable they are, to try and help that player start on that journey, whatever it is, absolutely whatever. It doesn't need to be a proper course. I spoke to players before where there's actually not been any action taken on the back of the meeting. It's been more of a reassurance that it's okay to go part-time, and the player went and done an apprenticeship. And the player texted me after and said, you know what, that was a great conversation. I feel a lot more confident now, which is great. I mean, getting those kind of messages is fantastic from that point of view because it means that it makes me feel fulfilled in what I do, you know, because all I want to do at the PFA, and I think all the whole team want to do at the PFA, is help players.
So you're currently doing events called Kickoff, is that right? And so this is getting, is it for first year apprentices or second year apprentices, getting them talking about things like mental health and like gambling. This, you know, I think these are really important conversations to be having, because again, if you think about, like, I don't know, even 10 years ago, talking to young men about mental health, for example, was still such a taboo thing, and it's so prevalent in every aspect of society, but especially, I guess, you know, if you're trying to do a career that you love, and you know, you want to be a professional footballer, for example, but things aren't quite falling for you, and you might be facing being let go or having to, you know, work out what else you're going to do with your life. What's it been like having these conversations with these guys? Are they more open to having these conversations than they were in the past, for example?
Absolutely. That's why we put a lot of funding in towards our support service, and obviously we're employed Dave McCracken in that area as well, who meets players and is kind of that middle person between the players and taking it further on to a qualified doctor or whatever the player needs, you know. Last year was the first year of Kickoff, where it's for first year apprentices with the aim of giving them an insight into what to expect in football on and off the pitch. So across the day, I'll introduce myself, introduce what the union is, who we are, what we do. But we then go into 6 workshops across the whole day, ranging from financial well-being, mental health and well-being, social media awareness, gambling awareness, equality and diversity, and football leadership. So there's a number of different things which are relevant in there. Kieran, obviously mental health's massive now, but you've got gambling all over social media. You've got social media, which is a cesspit you know, and you can find yourself in bother if you post something silly, because a lot of these players that are, I mean, the players attending this event are 16, 17 years old, and all they've known is social media. You know, they've grown up with it, so it's a massive part of their lives. When you compare yourself to my life or yourself or somebody else in the team, I'm on social media. I can take or leave it because I grew up without it, you know, until it went huge in 2011 or 12 or whatever it was. So these areas that we try and look at, gambling awareness, equality, diversity, is so important across football now. We want to make the players aware of what to be aware of, but also how they can prepare themselves and look after themselves on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well. And then obviously, as I said, gambling awareness is huge, and equality and diversity is just giving them because we've all heard that the language that's been used probably years and years ago, where racism was pretty bad. It's now even worse because of social media. But we want to try and make sure that we aren't trying to make it better, you know, and the players are aware of what they should be careful of. One, saying, but two, standing up for people who are discriminated against, you know.
When we think of footballers, you know, a lot of the time, you know, the general public just think, you know, mega millionaires driving sports cars, etc. But obviously in Scotland, the reality is that the vast majority of players are living much closer to the on leaner wages, shall we say. What's the actual reality of life for a player who's maybe in the Championship, League One, League Two? Because, you know, I think there's probably quite a lot of one-year contracts, for example. There's probably quite a lot of uncertainty, possibly even at a risk to even being able to get something as simple as like a mortgage, for example. How can you paint us a picture of how fragile life can be for, you know, a Scottish footballer, maybe not in the Premiership?
Absolutely, Kieran. I think you hit the nail on the head there with regards to one-year contracts. I mean, that's players lucky to get a 2-year contract in the Scottish Championship, and the wages aren't the greatest. A lot of players move month to month on their salaries, which is again difficult when it's maybe okay if you have a full-time job where there's no start and end date to your contract. But for footballers whose contract finishes on the 7th of June, for example, and you're living month to month, you're living on a cliff edge, you know, where if you don't get a new deal, what are you going to do? You've got bills to pay. So that's the reality for a lot of Championship players, where, and we've had examples of it before, where players have a difficulty to get mortgages because of that length of contract. But and it kind of ties in with myself, we've got one of our partners who provide or support players with getting their mortgages, and they do a lot of, they tell us quite often that a lot of lenders are now looking positively on players who have started doing something outside of football, whether it's a course or whatever it is. They look at that positively to say, okay, this player's got a 1-year deal, but they're potentially looking into moving into something else, and if that doesn't continue. So that's the reality of it. But a lot of Championship, League 1 and 2 players, they're part-time, and sometimes they're maybe in a better position than Championship players, Kieran, because they have a full-time job. They're playing part-time, they have a full-time job, and if that full-time contract doesn't get renewed on the 7th of June or whatever the date is, they've got an income through their job. You know, so that sometimes is a position that is more favourable for players that they think, you know what, I'm going to go and get a job full-time, earn some money doing that, and in football, as much as I want to play every day, football will be my second job. You know, that's the reality of it. But listen, there's more and more players doing it, Kieran, and the league standards are good at the lower leagues. You know, there's a lot of players who can maybe play at a higher level going down to play part-time because they think, you know what, that exact thing, they can go and earn and they can be more secure with a kind of career outside and in football, you know. So that's, and listen, part-time players work hard. They work a lot harder than probably full-time players because they've got a full-time job, 9 to 5. Some of them are out in in the elements during the winter, especially. I know I had teammates who, when I had a teammate who I had to travel with, he was a labourer, so he's out in the elements, and no matter what the weather is, and that's not just the cold; it's in the scorching sun. He's out, and that can also affect your body as well. And then you're coming to play football on a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, or on a Saturday as well. So it's difficult. But again, the pros and cons to both are probably there to see in terms of being full time. You're playing football every day. By being a part-time player, you are able to have a job, and if football stops for whatever reason, you're okay. You've got some money coming in, you know. But again, I get players coming to me who are part-time, who are unfulfilled by their full-time job. So it's my job to try and help players find something outside of football that they are passionate about. It's not always simple. It's not always straightforward. It's not always doable. But I always try and do my utmost to ensure that players, whether they've got football or not, will have something that they want to be doing for the rest of their life, you know, in the next 30 years or so, you know, because players will work after football longer than they'll play football. That's always what I advise the players to think about. I don't really go about saying it, but I think it's a good message for players to think about is, you know what, if I finish when I'm 35, I need to work for 30 years, you know. So I was trying to help players find something they would actually want to enjoy, no matter what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, I think there is more and more young kids obviously dreaming of a life as a professional footballer. I think there's probably way more parents nowadays as well, pinning their hopes on their kids becoming professional footballers. I was having a little Google on the amount of players, young players who actually, you know, go on to make it as professional footballers. The best stat I could find was referring to the Premier League in England, and it said that only 3% of academy players went on to make a single Premier League appearance in England. And obviously the figure's higher, you know, if you also include other English Football League clubs. Do you think young players are actually aware?
I think players are aware how difficult it is. I mean, even going through 14, 15, I've a coach at Hearts Academy, and 4 years in at the higher end, I was a coach in the under 16s, which the next point is under 18s. Stopped doing that back in 2019 when I joined the PFA. And that's why at that age it becomes a little bit stressful, because they start to worry what's going to happen. So players are aware of what's going on. I think the parents have got a big job, a big role in this, because they should need to be aware and support their kid, whether the kid makes it full time or into a senior club or not. They need to probably ensure that they are checking in with reality that it is so difficult. So make sure your child is aware of the difficulties. Give them the best opportunity to make it. Absolutely, make sure they work hard, but also make sure off the pitch they have the tools and the support and the awareness to look at things off the pitch, you know, and that's encouraging. I know that my parents, when I was that age, encouraged me to go to. I left school when I was in 4th year to go full time with Motherwell, and I was good at school. I was pretty intelligent and well in my exams, and I went to night school, and it never quite worked out. It was just too difficult. But that was back to 2001. There's so much more out there that's accessible for players when they come home from football, whether it's online courses or evening degrees or whatever. You know, it's just make sure that the parents are aware to encourage, because the kids will listen to the parents. They might not listen to myself, who is someone they've only met once or twice. You know, at the PFA, you know, they know who I am. In fact, you know, there's Chris Higgins, the PFA. They don't fully 100% trust what I'm saying, which is okay, because they don't know me well enough, or they don't know the team well enough, the PFA. But if the parents are aware of it, then great. You know, that's the generally when you're a kid, you learn to listen to your parents. Sometimes not, mind you. But that, I think players are aware of the difficulties, and it's very, very small percentages. I mean, I feel very, very privileged, Kieran, to have played for so long, because I was never. I would admit it. I wasn't the best. I wasn't in my group. I wasn't the best player. I was obviously good enough to get a full-time contract, but I showed a lot of grit and determination and resilience to come through ups and downs, and I came through the other side and managed to carry a career out. But I've seen a lot of better players than myself leave the game or get released from contracts because of the small percentages and the small margins that it takes to make a career in the game. And you said there 3% make a Premier League appearance. What is the? I mean, we don't know, but I bet you the percentage is 100 times lower when you say how many players made 200 Premier League appearances. You know, it's but again, players will. You said the percentage goes higher when it's in all football leagues. So players do carve out a career. They know they might not be a Premier League career, might not be. I mean, I'd love to have had the opportunity to play higher. Never quite worked out for a number of different reasons. But that's football. But I carved a career out, and I look back and I go, you know what? I gave that absolutely everything. You know, and that's if a young player goes through the academy, gets a full-time contract, and makes one Premier League appearances, and they've given it their absolute all, then they can look at themselves in the mirror when they're 35 years old and say, you know what, I tried, I gave it my best, and hopefully they're now into something else that is going to fulfil them just as much. You know, I mean, football's say just as much. That's a difficult one to say because football is the best. You know, it's you're getting paid to kick a ball and play your hobby. But I mean, I absolutely love what I do. I love coming out and work every day. I've been with the PFA for almost 4.5 years now, and not one day have I thought, you know what, can I bother today? You know, it's an exciting job. I'm involved in football, and more so, I'm very, very passionate about helping people, young players through to senior players. But going back to your initial question, I think more and more players they're aware of the difficulties, and that's why it becomes a bit difficult to deal with when they don't get what they want. You know, in terms of contracts, and then they get released, and it's a very, very emotional time.
Yeah. Do the clubs need to do anything better in terms of, you know, aftercare, in terms of, you know, we mentioned obviously 1-year contracts? Would it be, I mean, obviously the clubs have hardly got any money. I guess that's the real issue here, which is why they can only really offer 1-year contracts. But, you know, is there anything that the clubs can do to help support players, you know, if they get released, or anything that you would like to see?
Well, I think there's a lot of good work going on, Kieran. I think, and that's probably part of why what we do at the PFA. We've got Heather Richards, who has started back in August, and we had Blair Munn in the role before that. We've now got someone full time in the role of youth and women's development. And what we try and provide clubs is with an exit strategy. So we hope that the players are going to come through us, you know, and get the support that they need.
Yeah, things like an exit strategy. Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and it certainly sounds like things are moving in a very positive direction. Before I move on to the kind of final question, Chris, is there anything else you'd like to chat about regarding what you guys are doing at PFA, or anything else?
No, I mean, I think I've covered a fair bit. I mean, but as I say, we always try and do more and more to help players, and linking in with the clubs to provide an exit strategy supports the clubs, but also shows that what we want to try and do is support the players. And by creating relationships with the academy directors, the coaches, the players, it hopefully gets the clubs to point players in our direction, because we want to support the players, and that's the heart of what we are here for as a players' union, you know. And we want to, again, that's giving the clubs someone to support them as well, because like you said, there's not a lot of finances in Scottish football. So if we can support the players and the clubs with an exit strategy and coming through us for support, then great. And we want to continue growing and doing more and more for players, because it's a challenging career, you know.
Yeah. Okay, right. Well, that brings us on nicely then to the final question I've got for you, which I ask every guest, which is, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about Scottish football, what would it be?
Well, I seen your question earlier on, and I thought, you know what, and I've spoke thoroughly about it in this conversation, is if I had a magic wand, I would probably want every player to have something behind them in terms of a future career or a future career plan, or something behind them to ensure that they have a second career that is going to be as fulfilling and as enjoying, and they get as much enjoyment out of football when they leave the game for the next period of their life, 30 years or whatever it is. They have something that they're going to do. That's the answer to that one. I would love for every player to have a career after football that they loved as much as their own football career.
Oh, well, that's a lovely answer, Chris. Good. Right. Well, that brings an end to the podcast. Well, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. And yeah, really good to chat about, what you guys are doing. And, from my perspective, I think it's great. And it's nice that, the players have got support, and, there's nice open dialogue about, some serious issues that probably for years and years just went kind of untalked about, whether it's mental health or whether it's just preparing yourself for a new career. So listen, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for coming on, Chris, and thank you to everyone who was listening.
Thanks for having me, Kieran. Thank you.